It's your Friday daily delivery. I am Michael Rand. Happy to be back for the final show of the week, and a really good one at that. Velle E. Neal III will join me here in just a little while. Star Tribune columnist. Plenty to get to with Lavelle. Got some twin stuff with him. Some World Series talk. World Series begins tonight. Texas against Arizona, an interesting matchup. Lavelle will help me kind of make sense of that, make sense of how that pertains to the Twins. And Lavelle and I will get into some Gopher football stuff, some St. Thomas athletics, and kind of go from there. A fun conversation, so stick around for that in a little bit. Got some LeBron James thoughts towards the end of the show. Got to get into this Michigan spying video stuff a little bit because it's tangentially at least related to the Gophers now. Apparently there was a Gophers game that the spy was at, although not spying on the Gophers. It seems like you probably don't need to spy on the Gophers yet if you are Michigan, because you can take care of business any way you want in those games. So we'll get to that towards the end of the show. First, though, what did I miss? I got a hockey and a football thought. We got to start with the Wild. Lost 6-2 on Thursday night. Part of a bad night of hockey, by the way, if you are a Minnesota fan. Wild loses 6-2. Gophers lose 5-2. Number one ranked Gophers lose 5-2 to the Badgers. Gophers scored like 15 seconds into that game, end up losing 5-2. Badgers are a good team this year. They're like top 15, so one of many. I don't worry about the Gophers in October. I shouldn't worry about the Wild in October, but I kind of am, because if we can boil this down to its essence, I know it's oversimplified. I know it's not all his fault, but the Gus bus seems like it's got a flat right now. Filip Gustavsson has not been good in his last 4 starts, and they can sugarcoat it. They can say, he's not getting any help. It wasn't a matter of bad goals in this 6-2 loss to the Flyers. I think that's what Dean Nevison, head coach, said. Didn't see a bad goal, and any of them just wasn't getting much help from his teammates. Paraphrasing that a little bit, but there definitely is not. It hasn't been the same. You have not seen the same impact from the Wild's goaltending this season. Gustafsson started the year with a shutout. It was like, okay, everything is great again. They beat Florida. He had 41 saves in a shutout. Since then, last 4 starts, he has given up 22 goals. 22 goals. Now, one of those games was a 5 goals, but he had 54 saves in a shootout loss, overtime loss to Columbus. So that one not so bad. But Toronto, 7 goals, 33 saves. Edmonton, 4 goals, 28 saves. Now they did win that game. And then last night, 6 goals, 35 saves. His season numbers, even with that shutout now, 88.5 save percentage, 4.36 goals against average. Now, here's what I want to get to the most, though. Gustafsson quoted in Sarah McClellan's game story after that 6-2 loss where the Wild just didn't look good throughout. They tried to rally a little bit late, got to 3-2, but then everything fell apart again. Gustafsson, it doesn't feel like it's clicking yet. I don't know why. We still have the same defensive core, all that stuff. I don't know if we trust each other to do each other's job or if we talk too little. It doesn't click, and we need to start by trusting each other that they're going to do their job so you don't overdo your job. Great point at the end, right? I think that's a very key point, saying you don't want to overdo your job. When players start to press, when they start to think, hey, I've got to do more than what I'm capable of, then mistakes creep in. You start to overreach beyond your own abilities, and then it tends to go poorly. Now, the first part of it, though, is interesting. He's saying we still have the same defensive core. The Wild absolutely does not have the same defensive core right now. The personnel is different. They can imagine or wish that it was the same as it was a year ago, but they've had a combination of injuries and decisions they had to make that make this defensive core at the moment much different than it was last year. No Matt Dumba this year. Jared Spurgeon on long-term injured reserve has not played yet this year and will miss at least another 3 games now after they made that decision to put him on long-term injured reserve in order to get some more salary cap relief. So he hasn't played this year. Those are 2 of essentially your top 4 defenseman from a year ago, right? At least a top 6. I mean, Dumbo's generally a top 4 guy in minutes, top 4 guy in trust, things like that. Spurgeon's certainly a top pair defenseman. So without those guys, sometimes it's just as simple as you don't have the same players. You don't have players who are as good as you had when you thought you had a better defense. And last year they certainly had a better defense, playing ahead of Gustavsson. Some of those shots not getting through, some of those golden opportunities not happening, and certainly he was playing better last year as well. So it's all combined, but let's not pretend that this is the same defensive core. It is not, and because of that, they probably are all pressing a little bit to do too much, and they are winding up with bad situations. And right now for the Wild, it is adding up to some very uneven performances. They're 3-3-1. No panic right now, but a lot of those games giving up a lot of goals. Feels a little bit like the start of last year when they were giving up so many goals. They've got to figure out their defensive systems, and more importantly, they've got to figure out if they have the right defensive personnel. Now, another example of where personnel matters. I mentioned I had a football thought. Vikings running back committee this season and Dalvin Cook. They are related, of course. Vikings in the offseason moving on from Dalvin Cook, deciding that he had kind of reached the end of the line of his most useful years here in Minnesota, was going to cost too much to bring back. They let him go. He goes to the Jets, and it has not been great for either party so far. I'm not suggesting the Vikings should have kept Dalvin Cook. I am suggesting they miss the version of Dalvin Cook that they had for the last 6 years. And even last year when Dalvin Cook was breaking some long runs, still finishing with over 1,000 yards, still a capable running back. Whether he would have done similar things here this year is debatable because he went to the Jets. He is stuck now behind Breece Hall. He's not happy with his workload, just reading an ESPN story, not happy with everything going on. He is the subject of trade rumors with the trade deadline coming up in just a few days on Halloween. So Dalvin Cook, not in a great situation with the Jets. The Jets have found a better running back, Breece Hall coming back sooner from injury than maybe anybody would have thought. And now Dalvin Cook in a very reduced workload kind of situation and might get traded. But the Vikings, on the flip side, have not had success in the running game. They were talking this year about Alexander Mattison taking over and kind of being this more efficient running back. They wanted to run the ball more, brought in Josh Oliver, take some of the pressure off of Kirk Cousins. Vikings are 30th right now in the NFL in rushing yards per game. They're averaging about 75 rushing yards per game. It's been a little bit better in the last few weeks, but still not really having a much of an impact in the running game, at least consistently. They've gone to more of a split in the backfield with Alexander Mattison and Cam Akers. Both those guys are fine. They are not Dalvin Cook in his prime, that is for certain. They don't have a single rushing touchdown yet this season. So you look at it, you say the Vikings have had a good running game the past several years. It's personnel. It's not hard. It's not hard. It's been Dalvin Cook. Dalvin Cook, when healthy, has been an above-average top 10 running back in the NFL. He's been a game-breaking style player. So if you look at it, you say, well, what's gone wrong for the running game? It's not hard. It's the same thing as the Wild. They don't have the same players. They don't have the same players who were playing effectively last year. Same with the Vikings. And we can sugarcoat it or make excuses all we want or try to explain away reasons why something is different. A lot of times in sports, you guys, it just comes down to how good the players are.
Grand Casino would like to take a moment and salute the true football fan. The passion, the hope, the anticipation, that incomparable feeling of winning. Grand Casino would also like to take a moment to remind you that you can find all that anticipation, thrill, and winning at Grand Casino. Grand Casino. Let your story begin.
Let's bring in Velle E. Neal III onto Daily Delivery today. I want to talk a little baseball with Velle, and I want to talk a little college sports too. You can't see him. He's got his Illinois sweatshirt on. He's representing. It's all good. He's going to be covering some Gophers stuff here soon, though. Velle, how you doing?
I'm doing great. How's everything?
Things are good. Interestingly, I was kind of watching the baseball playoffs kind of unfold. We don't stop watching just when the Twins lose, but Texas against Arizona, Velle, we couldn't have I don't know who would have imagined that World Series matchup at the beginning of the season, let alone even the beginning of the playoffs. And yet here they are. Two teams that the Twins kind of dominated this year, right? Kind of a weird kind of side note to that. But what do you make of the baseball playoffs that have taken us on this path to where now Friday night it's Rangers and Diamondbacks in game one?
Well, I think it's hilarious. I think it's great for the sport when you have the unknown teams get in. Of course, in terms of market size, I'm sure Major League Baseball would like to see a larger market team than Arizona get in there. But you know what? It's those things can't happen the way you want them all the time. And Texas is a pretty solid market as well. And we saw during the season, Texas was playing like some of the best baseball in the league for a long stretch of the season. Then they had that hiccup in like August, September, and that's when they hooked the Twins, and the Twins beat them in the 3-game series and a 4-game series. But you knew that team was going to be reckoned with. Corey Seager, Josh Jung, Jonah Heim, Garver contributing, Marcus Semien. It's just a talented team. And they pretty much put that squad together from different ways. They made some trades, made some free agent signings. Man, Odell picking up Adolis Garcia off waivers from the Cardinals. My goodness, what a pickup was that? He's the Randy Arozarena of this postseason right now. And Randy used to be with the Cardinals too. I believe Arozarena and Garcia were teammates with the Cardinals.
Really?
At one point, yeah. But it's styles. Different styles make for good fights, and so I'm curious to see how this is going to work out because the Rangers do have some speed, but they like to hit the ball at the ballpark, and they got some good arms in that pitching staff. But the way Arizona's done this with this chaos approach they like to create, stealing bases. I think they led the league in sacrifice hits during the season. Corbin Carroll's got like 50 steals. A couple of the guys have steals. And they've earned this, man. They went through the Dodgers, the Braves, and the Phillies to get here. And if you could do something like that, then you've got a chance to win this thing. So, I think Texas has its hands full here with a team that's got a lot of, they've got a lot of momentum. Their confidence is sky high. I don't think anyone expected him to be in the World Series, so there's no reason for them to feel pressure. I think it's going to be a fascinating series.
If you're the Twins sitting here looking at these two teams and looking at how the playoff format has changed and transformed baseball, and if you're looking at how your own season went and advancing at least a round, like how do you think they sit here and evaluate? Look, these two teams aren't. They're certainly different than the Twins, but in terms of results, they weren't that much different than the Twins. These are teams the Twins certainly competed with and can compete with and did quite well against this year. Does that shape any organizational philosophy, or at least the fact that now that 6 teams make the postseason in each league, it feels like it's less about excellence and more about just getting in and giving yourself a chance?
Yeah, I think it is in terms of just getting in, and then anything can happen. The playoffs are a crapshoot, and just sticking around, can put you in line to make a run to the World Series. Plus, the thing too is this: the Twins. You look at these teams, especially the Final Four. I'm stunned the Braves are out of the postseason. I thought they had a great chance of winning the World Series, but other than them. The Twins could compete with all these other teams. The 1-2 punch of Pablo Lopez and Sonny Gray was as good as any 1-2 punch that is still in the playoffs between Max Scherzer and Jordan. I like Jordan Montgomery a lot, but you take the Twins' top 2 pitchers; they're not that overmatched against these other teams' top 2s. Offense has ended up being the big question coming out of spring training, going into the regular season, definitely the first half of the season before they improved during the second half. But it would have been interesting to see how the Twins would have went up against the Rangers pitching staff if they had gotten that far. But I think this validates a lot of things that the Twins have done in terms of roster construction, and it should motivate them to continue to add on this way over the next couple of years, because their window's wide open. They've got young hitters with upside, Buxton's feeling great after knee surgery. They need to find a competent number 2 for Sonny Gray, who's probably going to leave as a free agent. But what you see right now in this postseason is a big sign that, the Twins weren't that far off.
Yeah. You wrote, I think, not long after the season ended, you wrote about Buxton and kind of, you got to figure that out. That's priority number 1. You touched on Sonny Gray, the kind of figuring out who's your number 2 starter, because that was such a factor going into the postseason. If you could point to one thing that made you think they could win a series or 2 in the playoffs, it was that they had those 2 frontline starters, and they might just have the one now with Pablo Lopez, unless they feel good about what they have or can add, a Sonny Gray equivalent if it's not Sonny Gray. The payroll, though, is an issue. And I think we talked about this even before when you're talking about, the Bally Sports North contract is expired. They don't know how much TV revenue they're going to have coming in. Guys are expensive. They got the Correa contract, the Buxton contract. If you're the poll ads, you're sitting there and you're thinking, okay, what do we invest on this team? How much should we invest? Where should we take the payroll to versus the priorities? How do you think that all matches up for this year?
That it's going to be a tough setting, because I think the Twins and a bunch of other teams are waiting to see what's going to come out of this whole Bally's network lawsuit in terms of putting their games on television next year. And some people whispered that their revenue could be TV revenue could drop about $20 million from this past season into 2024. And no doubt that's going to affect their decision making on some of these free agent moves. I would hope they would look at the fact that people believe this team's on the upswing and continue to fund a team just trying to push to be more than it was a year ago, the previous year. They didn't, for all this, for as well as they played the second half of the season, they still didn't draw 2 million yet this year. And like I said, they should invest more, because I think the payoff would be felt in terms of attendance boost and people again, because I think people felt good about the Twins at the end of the year. Even when they lost to Houston, they weren't as devastated as they've been in the past, because the Twins actually showed some fight. They showed some competitiveness. They won some playoff games. So that should all factor into how the Twins fund this roster next year.
Speaking of funding a roster, I believe you're going to cover Gopher football over the weekend. There's been plenty of talk from PJ Fleck along the way about name, image, likeness money, things like that, and whether they're going to become a AAA team to some other teams. A nice baseball analogy from PJ a few weeks ago. But the win over Iowa changes, at least temporarily, the narrative of this season for the Gophers. Now they play a winnable slate of games. Michigan State, no offense, the week after that, Illinois. That's a very winnable game, especially at home. And then at Purdue. Where do you see this team in its kind of arc right now?
I still think you can't trust them from week to week. I mean, they matched up against Iowa, and Iowa's offense is just offensive to watch.
Yeah, it's terrible.
They were able to grind out a win, and credit to them for that, no doubt. But you still know what you're getting in this team from week to week basis. I think you got to be careful. I mean, Michigan State's coming in, and all the upheaval that's going on. There's more updates about Mel Tucker and his off the field activities.
Right.
They definitely are winnable games. But tell me what the Gophers do well. What are they good at? Running. You like the running game? Do you think they have a dynamic passing attack?
I like the running game when Taylor is healthy, but he's been banged up. I liked the defense against Iowa, but I haven't loved them against some of the other better quarterbacks they face. So yeah, I don't think they have an identity yet. I think that's a good point you're making.
Yeah, and so when you're not sure what you can bring to the table, how can you game plan? How can you attack? How can you scheme correctly? I don't know. I'm not sure if PJ knows what he's got, and it's part of the transition from a run heavy team. Sorry to see that Mo Ibrahim went on the IR for the Lions with that hip injury. That's too bad. I was kind of rooting for him to do well. But, yeah, I think it's just tough for the Gophers to it's just you don't know what you get with them from week to week. So, I mean, yeah, they could win the next 2 games easily and feel a lot better about themselves. They easily could lose one of the 2, and I don't want to say both, But that's the state of Gopher football. It's just you just don't know. So it's exciting at one end, but it's just distressing in the other.
Well, the whole Big Ten West is just a muddled kind of joke. I mean, Illinois, I thought they were going to be better this year. I'm a little disappointed in where they are this year. You probably are even more disappointed.
No, they've had 2 bad losses. They gave up like 18 unanswered points to Wisconsin in the fourth quarter.
Saw that.
I'm like, God. And then I can't remember the other team. They've had 2 bad losses this year. Oh, Purdue, I think they lost too. And their former coach, Ryan Walters. God, yeah. So they're unreliable. They've been banged up. They've had to move some guys around. They were a run first team. When they had Chase Brown, they have not really adjusted to the loss of Chase Brown. So it's not just the Gophers; it's some other teams as well. So, and that's the crazy part, because this West division is going to change dramatically when USC and UCLA come in. Oh, I'm sorry, they're just going to one big fat conference, isn't that right?
18 teams. I mean, it's just college sports is just, it's silly. We've talked about it before, but it's just even if you don't like progress or change, this doesn't even feel like progress. It just feels weird. Like, why?
Cal and Stanford are going to the ACC.
Yes. It's the wrong coast. It's Atlantic Coast.
It's crazy enough that you got 2 Pac-12 schools going to the Big Ten, but 2 going to the ACC. I know. Look, college is out of control. It's out of control. And the Big Ten, they're going to go to 20. They're going to find 2 other schools to join. They'll become the Big 20. And they'll break up into 4-5 team divisions and then have a semifinals and then the finals for the conference championship. That's my crazy prediction going forward.
Well, so as long as the Gophers could be in with like Iowa, Wisconsin, Illinois, and Northwestern, I think they might take that. Yeah.
Here's the thing. Who's going to win the West? It's so wide open. I mean, the Gophers could get hot and make things interesting. They definitely
have a chance.
could.
Yeah, they got to win these next 3, because then they end with Ohio State and then Wisconsin. But to give themselves a chance, they got to win these next 3.
Yeah, Wisconsin's beatable. I don't like their chances with Ohio State, but Wisconsin's beatable.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't put it out of the realm of possibility that the Gophers hold on to the axe for another year.
Yeah. Well, they've got the axe and the pig in their possession for the first time, and I don't know how long. I think someone pointed out it's been about 20 years since they've had them both at the same time. We were making a point about the conferences, though, and with football, it's all about TV. Obviously, it's all about the big revenue sports. Volleyball is a growing sport in a lot of ways, but it still falls into the category of, it's not football, it's not men's basketball in terms of revenue. Where you think about the craziness, especially of these conferences, is, these sports that play more than once a week that have to travel coast to coast now. And you just wrote about some Gopher volleyball players. Like, I just have to imagine that's going to be weird for them. I think the competition will be fine, but just the nature of who they're playing and how this schedule looks for teams like the Gopher volleyball team, it should, if you're going to do it, maybe just do it for football only. I don't know. It doesn't make sense to be crisscrossing the entire country for football.
Well, what if you're Rutgers and like the Rutgers volleyball team's got to play at UCLA?
Yeah.
Now, how do you do that? Do you just set them out? Do you set them out for a week and they go play UCLA one day and then USC 2 days later and then come back? How does that? How do you square that with their schoolwork?
How do you go to school? How do you go to class?
I don't know. Are they going to Zoom while they're on the road?
I don't know.
I guess that's possible now in this day and age, but. Yeah, these decisions weren't made with the student athlete in mind.
No,
definitely not.
Final thing, you went to St. Thomas the other day, I believe, to kind of see the kickoff to their men's and women's basketball kind of practice, start of the season. Set the scene for me, because it sounds like it was kind of an old school, like Midnight Madness kind of environment, right?
It was nuts. It was nuts. Walking into the arena, the cheerleaders were lining the hallway into the stadium and into the gym. So they were cheering for everyone that was coming in, and then they had the fog machine working. So there was a fog hanging out over the court for the entire presentation. Both teams wore sunglasses and bandanas. The coaching staffs were wearing sunglasses. Tower, the men's coach, had on a leather jacket. The whole theme was rev it up, and so this was all punctuated by the lights being turned down and the mascot Tommy riding on the back of a motorcycle now into the gymnasium. Now I'm telling people on press row, I said, oh my God, we're gonna have another Tubby Smith situation. Because if you remember, Tubby rode a motorcycle onto the court when he was at Texas Tech and spilled out on the court. And so I'm watching carefully how this guy is coming out with this mascot on the back and how this is going to turn out. So it worked out. No one was injured. They had a 3-point shooting contest, had a dunk contest, got people fired up for the new season. So it was great.
Kind of fun, right? I mean, just, we've talked about St. Thomas since they made the transition to Division I, but they keep kind of ascending. They played the Gophers in men's and women's hockey earlier this year and were competitive, at least in that first game with the Gopher men's hockey team, took them to overtime. Basketball feels like the sport where you can be competitive the quickest, at least on a level of, competing with a team like the Gophers more quickly, the only other Division I team in town and the only Division I program in town for a long time across the board, because you only need a handful of players to field a competitive basketball team. It doesn't take much to build that up. So they've got to feel excited about this kind of time in that program. Well,
here's the thing. I don't think the Gophers men's basketball team wants any part of St. Thomas right now. I think St. Thomas would be favored in that matchup.
Yeah.
Yeah. But there's a lot of great stuff going on campus. There's a lot of construction going on. They're building another arena. There's going to be an update on the hockey arena in January, I was told. I haven't been on campus in a long time. I don't know, Mike, if you remember back in the day, but Star Tribune, Pioneer Press, and somehow a couple musician attorneys.
Yeah,
we used to play pickup games at McCarthy Gymnasium.
I played there all the time. Yeah,
on Tuesdays and Thursdays.
Yeah,
and I didn't know where the basketball arena was yesterday when I showed up there, so I went to McCarthy Gym to ask for directions to the arena. And the place is unrecognizable because I used to walk in, and the baseball office was right there to the right. And that's where I met Dennis Denning.
Yeah,
that office is gone. The building's been expanded, and I'm walking around campus going, I don't remember this building. I don't remember this. I don't remember that. Wow. They have really upgraded the facilities here, and more is coming. It's a growing Division I campus, man. And I think it's going to be good and fun for the community. Yeah. Who knows? I would imagine there's a lot of big, well-oiled St. Thomas donors. Their NIL may be bigger than the Gophers right now.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, there are some deeper pockets over there to be sure. And like I said, I mean, give it a couple more years, and maybe the Gophers will have built that back up by then, and you can see a rivalry brewing. And hey, maybe someday be kind of like a Marquette versus a Badgers kind of thing, where both of those programs are going well, and that'd be fun because you could use a nice crosstown rivalry like that. Lavelle,
it'll be.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I just say it would be great. I think it would definitely be a draw. Don't know if St. Thomas football ever get to the level of the Gophers, but stranger things that happen. Who was it? Jerry Kill that lost to was it South Dakota once, or was it barely like a 15-14? Or
they barely beat them. They struggled with North Dakota State for a number of years there, where the games were either they would lose or they were too close for comfort. And that's one of the best teams in the next lowest division. So yeah, St. Thomas has got a ways to catch up there. That league is much different than the Big Ten, but in basketball you can catch up quick.
Yeah, my goal is I'm gonna start banging the drum for St. Thomas Gophers basketball.
Do it. You and Royce, both of you want it bad. If you guys both get the megaphone out, we'll get it going, and we'll shame Ben Johnson into doing it.
Now you could probably, you could possibly sell out Target Center if you had that.
I think
match
so.
Up there. Yeah.
But who wants the revenue? Who wants the fun? I guess not those guys. Well, it'll be fun on Saturday, Lavelle. We'll look for your column from Gophers Michigan State, and we'll talk again soon.
Thanks for having me.
Postscript to that conversation with Lavelle, I want to circle back to some Twin stuff really quick. Interesting story from Bobby Nightingale Jr. in the Star Tribune on Friday morning and on StarTribune.com. Kind of talking about the catching situation and how the Twins still like the combination of Ryan Jeffers and Christian Vasquez. Vasquez under contract for 2 more years, signed that 3-year, $30 million deal in the offseason before 2023, and then sat on the bench the entire postseason as Jeffers took over ostensibly as the number one catcher, even though it was a pretty even split during the regular season. Jeffers just a better offensive year. But the Twins still seem like they like that combination. But that's something to watch going forward as they think about shedding payroll at a certain point, maybe influenced by their TV contract and other things. As they think about that, is Vasquez's salary something that could be expendable? Now, in any kind of trade, they might have to eat some of that salary, but they might be able to finesse some salary relief if they ever decided they wanted to move on from him. As it is right now, they like what he brings to the table. They like his pitch framing. They like his ability to handle pitchers. They like that they can play either guy and that either guy gives them a good chance to win. So not something that's imminent, but watch that. That's money that they might think about saving at a certain point, especially if they have some prospects, as they do in the minors, who might be able to take over that split sometime soon. Let us finish with the cooler. A couple thoughts here. The Michigan sign-stealing scandal has reached the Gophers. Apparently, the Michigan staffer who is in all sorts of trouble and is linked to all sorts of other Michigan coaches now by a Washington Post report. This thing is getting more treacherous for the higher-ups in Michigan as time goes on. Jim Harbaugh already tangentially at least related to a lot of different scandals here at Michigan. That staffer, Connor Stallions, apparently bought a ticket to a Gophers Ohio State game in September 2021 at Huntington Bank Stadium. He was a volunteer assistant at the time for Michigan. The seat was in section 142, right across the field from the Buckeyes sideline. Now, obviously, trying to decode the sideline, those signs, the sideline signs that teams put up. This whole scandal is about that, trying to decipher that ahead of time. That is illegal. You can try to do it in game, but you cannot use video. You cannot use advanced scouting. And this, Michigan, apparently, this guy was going to all these different games sitting on the opposite sideline and trying to decipher ahead of time what these teams' hand signals were, so you might know going into a game what they were trying to do. So it has reached the Gophers, although they're probably not scouting the Gophers. Like I said, you don't need to necessarily do that to beat the Gophers. Not saying they're a bad program, but it seems like most of these efforts were to try to beat some of the upper echelon teams. And I will be curious to see where this all goes, because this is quite the scandal. And if I was any team who was impacted by this, I would be very upset. So something to watch for as you think about this. I don't think anything's going to get resolved for a while, but I hope this doesn't just kind of fade, because this seems pretty serious to me. Finally, took all of one game for LeBron James to scrap LeBron James and the Lakers to scrap the 30-minute limit that they were going to try to put on him this year in order to preserve wear and tear on his body. Played the entire fourth quarter, played 35 minutes because the Lakers desperately needed him to beat Phoenix. Phoenix was shorthanded, down 2 guys, no Bradley Beal, no Devin Booker, but they were still beating the Lakers going into the fourth quarter. LeBron plays the whole fourth quarter, has a great quarter. Lakers win, plays 35 minutes. So good luck with that, Lakers. Good luck trying to keep LeBron on a minutes restriction all year. You couldn't even help yourselves in game 2 of the season, so we'll see if LeBron is able to keep himself healthy all season. I hope he is. Obviously one of the greatest players of all time, if not the greatest, still going strong at this point of his career, but I don't think they're going to be able to keep him on that minutes restriction if they expect to compete and get a high enough seed to be in the playoffs and be a factor this year. That will do it for me today. That'll do it for me this week. Hope you enjoyed all the shows. Good stuff coming up next week. Vikings-Packers on Sunday. I'm sure Royce and I will go deep on that. Listen to Access Vikings mailbag episode coming up on today. And post-game from Ben and Andrew after that game at Lambeau Field. Until then, I am Michael Rand, back at it again on Monday.